Hey guys. Tonight we dive into a story so strange, so unsettling, and yet so hilariously grim that you'll probably wonder how on earth anyone survived medieval life at all. And in this case, you probably wouldn't have. Picture this. You're walking through the bustling streets of Strasbourg. It's the summer of 1518, and the air smells of horse dung, fresh bread, and mildew rising from the cobbled alleys. Children chase each other. Merchants haggle over sacks of rye, and old men grumble about taxes. Then, suddenly, you see her. A woman steps into the middle of the street. Her name is Frau Trophäa, though you won't know that yet. She looks around, eyes half closed as if she's sleepwalking, and then her arms begin to twitch. At first, people think she's having some kind of fit, or maybe she's drunk on sour wine. But her feet start tapping, then stomping, her whole body swaying in a rhythm that only she can hear. Within minutes, she's dancing furiously, her dress swirling around her ankles, sweat soaking her forehead, and her hair sticking to her cheeks. And she doesn't stop. Not for a drink, not for food, not even to sleep. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to hear where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now, so drop that in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The day drags on, and Frau Trophäa keeps dancing. Some people chuckle at her ridiculous moves. Others whisper that the devil has possessed her, while a few more compassionate souls try to hold her down. But she's slippery with sweat, legs jerking and flinging out, feet pounding the stones. By nightfall, her eyes are bloodshot, tears streak her dirt-stained face, and her breath comes in ragged gasps. Still, she dances. You watch, equal parts horrified and mesmerized, wondering when her body will give out. Historians still argue whether this was her choice or an illness that hijacked her nerves. Some say she was releasing pent-up anger at her husband, dancing away her misery in a society where women had little voice. Others argue it was a disease of the mind, triggered by famine, despair, and the endless funerals that filled the city with grief-laced air. By the third day, her feet have blistered so badly that with each step, little dark smudges of blood appear on the ground. Her neighbors, now deeply unsettled, call the local priests. They mutter Latin prayers under their breath and sprinkle holy water. But she keeps dancing, arms flailing like a puppet with half its strings cut. And then, something worse happens. People start joining in, but tonight, you're just watching her alone. You can hear her gasping breaths in the humid summer dawn. Her hair is matted against her neck, her dress ripped at the seams from her violent spinning. A stray dog sniffs her footprints, recoiling at the coppery smell of blood. In your mind's eye, you see her eyelids fluttering, desperately needing sleep, but her feet keep moving. Left foot slap, right foot scrape, spin, heel pound, toes flick, over and over again. You think about how your knees hurt after jogging for 15 minutes, and here she is, dancing herself into an early grave. One historical record, the Chronicle of Strasbourg, states that within a week, dozens had joined her. But here at the beginning, it's just her lonely figure in the dawn mist, a trembling silhouette of bone and fevered determination. You imagine the city guards watching her, leaning on their halberds, making light jokes to disguise their fear. Bet she's inventing a new dance. One snickers, though his eyes stay fixed on her writhing feet. Another mutters, or greeting death before he greets her. Because here's the thing, you probably wouldn't survive this. Not with medieval shoes, not with your legs tearing themselves apart. not with the dehydration that comes from hours of unbroken exertion under a burning July sun. Later, some would say she started the plague by angering a saint, while others claimed it was witchcraft. And of course, there's always the possibility she just really loved dancing. But historians still argue whether her frenzied dance was freedom or doom. That is, if doom comes with a drumbeat only you can hear, you sit quietly now, picturing her final moments of this first dance. The sun creeps higher, illuminating the half-circle of gawking neighbors. Her chest heaves, her mouth opens as if to scream, but all that emerges is a hoarse, breathless sob before her feet push off again into the next trembling step. And there, as the bells toll prime across Strasbourg's silent rooftops, Frau Trophäa keeps dancing, unaware that by tomorrow, dozens more will fall into rhythm with her, and by next week, the city itself will be stomping towards death. The next morning arrives with a hushed anticipation that ripples through Strasbourg's narrow streets. Word spreads like wildfire. You trudge towards the square, curiosity prickling at your tired senses. There she is, Frau Trophäa, still dancing. Her feet are now wrapped in ragged cloth strips soaked with blood, her ankles swollen like overripe fruit ready to burst. Around her, a small crowd gathers in a trembling hush. But today, something shifts in the air. One by one, people step forward. First, it's a thin baker with flour dusting his eyebrows. He watches her for a long moment, his lips pressed tight. Then he sighs, as if resigned to some private doom, and steps into the rhythm. His knees jerk forward, his arms flail with awkward grace, and his feet slap the cobbles in sync with hers. The crowd gasps, but before they can process this, another joins, a young maid, hair tied in a limp bun, eyes vacant as she begins to sway. You stand there, stomach clenching. Their faces look dazed, as if each dancer's mind is somewhere far beyond the square, perhaps in some hidden realm of pounding drums and shadowy shapes. Within days, over 30 people are caught up in the rhythm. Men, women, even children too young to properly balance their limbs start twitching and stomping, their faces twisted in feverish exertion. Historians still argue whether this was mass psychosis or a reaction to contaminated rye. Ergot fungus, a hallucinogenic mold that could send entire villages spiraling into convulsions and strange visions. Some scholars dismiss the ergot theory, arguing that convulsions and hallucinations wouldn't produce coordinated dancing, but rather wild thrashing and spasms. Yet the image of 100 villagers tripping on medieval LSD while busting out their final moves is hard to erase from your mind. By the end of the week, nearly 400 people are dancing. Imagine that. 400 stomping feet, 400 heaving chests, the square echoing with grunts, gasps, the slap of soles against stone. You hear it in your mind now, a sickening orchestra of desperation. Their eyes are rimmed with red, tears cutting through grime on their cheeks. Some try to beg for help, but can only wheeze through clenched teeth as their bodies keep jerking forward, sideways, backwards, in grotesque choreography. One mainstream historical fact is that the city council, deeply alarmed, decided that the dancers must be suffering from overheated blood, a popular medical theory of the time. The logical cure? Let them keep dancing to sweat out the illness? Yes, in true medieval fashion. Their solution was to build a stage in the center of town, hire musicians, and encourage the plague to keep going until it burned itself out. If you're thinking this sounds like giving a pyromaniac a flamethrower, you're right. You can almost hear the pipers tuning up, their reedy notes slicing the humid July air as drummers set a relentless beat. Some dancers collapse, frothing at the mouth, only to be dragged away so the crowd can keep moving. Jesters arrive to cheer them on with exaggerated twirls and cartwheels, their painted faces frozen in grim mirth. You catch a waft of their greasy face paint mixed with sweat and rotting sandals. It is not a pleasant smell. A quirky tidbit hidden in city archives claims that the dancing plague became so overwhelming that carpenters and blacksmiths struggled to get to work without stepping over limp, writhing bodies strewn across the streets. At night, the townsfolk slept fitfully to the echo of distant drums and muffled sobs, praying they wouldn't wake up to find their own feet twitching under the sheets. You watch as a dignified old merchant, known for his fine wool imports, jerks his hips violently, his silk doublet stained dark with sweat. His powdered wig falls off as he spins, revealing his bald head gleaming like an oiled melon under the noon sun. A group of children gather to watch, giggling nervously before realizing that this is no festival dance. Their giggles fade into silent dread. One light joke drifts through your mind. At least medieval Europe never ran out of cardio. But here, cardio means death. Imagine running on a treadmill that never stops, your heart hammering until it tears itself apart inside your chest, your muscles breaking down as your blood turns toxic from the effort. Some dancers collapse and die of exhaustion, strokes, or heart attacks right there on the street. Others are carried away only to die hours later from shock and dehydration. Still, the music keeps playing. The priests chant prayers in Latin, their voices trembling with fear as they circle the dancers, sprinkling holy water that evaporates almost instantly on sunburnt skin. They believe it's Saint Vitus cursing the town, punishing them for their sins with this lethal dance. In your mind, you picture the thin line between devotion and terror as worshippers build makeshift shrines, laying out offerings of candles, silver rings, and dried lavender, hoping to appease the angry saint. You stand there, feeling the oppressive heat radiating from hundreds of bodies twisting in synchronized agony. You wonder if the air was thick with grief, famine, and fear before. What is it now, except a theater of despair where the music never stops? And just like that, the summer sun begins to set again over Strasbourg, casting long shadows over twitching bodies as the dancers keep stomping, their agony rising with the dusk wind like a fevered prayer. As the sun rises again over Strasbourg's huddled rooftops, you trudge back into the city square, the morning air sharp with the tang of sweat, blood, and stale beer. The dancers are still moving. Some are foaming at the mouth, their eyes rolling back, but their feet continue to slap the cobbles with dull, meat-thudding sounds. Their clothes are crusted with dirt, blood, and vomit. The musicians, exhausted and fearful, keep playing their lutes and flutes with trembling fingers, glancing nervously at the priests and city officials standing to the side. You hear a physician declare, with the utmost confidence of medieval medicine, that the dancer's blood is overheated and thick. This, he explains, causes the brain to boil with chaos. His solution is simple. Let them dance it out until their bodies collapse or the humor rebalances. You think of your doctor prescribing dancing until you drop dead, and realize medieval health insurance would not have covered your modern needs. Historians still argue whether this treatment was genuine ignorance or quiet panic, because beneath their confident pronouncements, fear rippled like an underground river. The city council turned to the church, hoping spiritual intervention might succeed where physicians failed. The priest's plan was equally theatrical, an exorcism ritual involving Saint Vitus's shrine. Some believed he had cursed them for moral corruption, and only by praying at his mountain chapel could the plague be lifted. So, groups of skeletal dancers were hauled, twitching and shrieking, up forested paths to the saint's shrine. Imagine the eerie procession winding through moonlit trees, lanterns swaying, Priests chanting, dancers dragging their shredded feet across the rocky trail, each step leaving behind smears of dark blood. A few collapse along the way, their hearts bursting like rotten fruit under strain. But the rest are tied with red shoes and given wooden crosses to hold, while priests pray feverishly for salvation. One quirky tidbit from local lore claims that some priests blamed demonic fiddle music echoing through Strasbourg's hills at night. Apparently, demons hosted raucous midnight dances in the forest, luring unsuspecting townsfolk into madness. You picture a red-skinned demon sawing away on a fiddle while imps clap in rhythm, medieval EDM, but with fewer glow sticks and far more existential horror. Meanwhile, back in the city, physicians try bloodletting. You watch them cut thin slices into dancers' forearms to drain the supposed poison. Blood pools on the dusty stones, flies gathering instantly, but the dancers just keep moving, their arms dripping crimson trails down their gowns and breeches. A few doctors suggest mustard plasters to draw out evil humors through the skin. The hot, pungent smell makes onlookers gag. Your grateful videos didn't exist in the Middle Ages. TikTok's nose would have collectively curled. One mainstream historical fact is that municipal authorities even built a special wooden stage in the city square for dancers to safely convulse under supervision, hiring musicians to play day and night. This setup was meant to contain the chaos, but it only encouraged more to join. The pounding drums pulling fresh victims from silent doorways like moths to flame. Each day, more collapse. Each dawn, more arrive to take their place. You watch an old nun, her habit dark with sweat, her feet bare and swollen, her rosary beads clacking against her chest as she staggers side to side. Her lips mumble Hail Marys between sobs, but her legs ignore her prayers, jerking in a grotesque rhythm that has nothing to do with faith. Behind her, a butcher's apprentice stomps so hard his wooden shoes splinter apart. His toes spill onto the stones, skin peeling from the constant friction. Yet he laughs, a shrill, cracked giggle of a man long past sanity. Historians still argue whether this entire plague was a physical illness or mass hysteria triggered by starvation, fear, and superstition. Some claim it was choreomania, a term for frenzied group dancing episodes recorded sporadically across medieval Europe, often after famine or disease outbreaks. Others suggest it was an elaborate form of religious penance gone horribly wrong. But no matter the cause, you can't help but think, what twisted fate makes a body dance itself into oblivion? At the shrine of Saint Vitus, priests tie red shoes onto dancers' blistered feet as offerings, sprinkling them with holy water and anointing them with sacred oil. They chant prayers until their voices are hoarse. A few dancers stop moving, collapse, and begin to weep with relief. But many remain trapped in their silent torment. Imagine their minds screaming for mercy while their bodies ignore every desperate command to be still. You stand in the candlelit gloom of the shrine, the thick scent of beeswax, sweat, and blood mixing in your lungs. The priest's whispered Latin drones on like a lullaby to the damned. You notice a small wooden carving of Saint Vitus above the altar, his youthful face eternally serene as he holds up a palm in blessing. Irony drips from the silent stone. Below, dozens of half-dead dancers claw at their crosses, hoping for an impossible release. And so the city waits. The drums continue, and the plague dancers keep stomping their way towards darkness, praying for sleep they will never find. You wake in your mind's eye to another sweltering dawn over Strasbourg, the square alive with a sight so surreal it feels like a fever dream. Hundreds now dance together, bodies swaying and jerking like puppets with tangled strings. The air is thick with the smell of rotting feet, stale sweat, dried blood, and the faint sweetness of clover from the nearby fields. A scent that feels wildly out of place amidst such human ruin. As you trudge closer, a town crier stands on a crate, shouting updates to the crowd. More dead overnight, 2 millers, 1 seamstress, and the blacksmith's eldest son. His voice cracks on the final announcement, but no one looks surprised. By now, death is a casual companion in Strasbourg's streets. Historians still argue whether the plague's spread was physical or psychological. Some claim it was ergotism from contaminated rye bread, a fungus with LSD-like properties that can cause hallucinations, convulsions, and burning pain in limbs. But skeptics argue that ergot's effects include spasms, not coordinated dance steps. Others lean towards the theory of mass psychogenic illness, a psychological phenomenon where trauma, fear, and grief burst forth as physical symptoms across an entire community. You imagine the townsfolk's collective stress. Famine had gnawed their bellies that year. Smallpox still simmered in nearby villages, and taxes pressed down on them like iron weights. Death was everywhere, silent and invisible. So perhaps dancing was the body's final rebellion against unending misery. A quirky tidbit from local chronicles mentions that even animals seemed disturbed, with stray dogs howling all night and horses refusing to cross certain streets, as if even beasts could sense the cursed rhythm echoing through the stones. By now, the city council is desperate. Their let-them-sweat-it-out strategy has failed miserably. The stage they built only fueled the mania. Music pulled new victims into the throng each day. Desperate for answers, they send messengers to consult physicians in Basel and Paris, scouring old texts for wisdom. One French doctor suggests locking all dancers in dark rooms until their humors rebalance. Another recommends beating them with thorned branches to drive out demons. Neither sounds particularly humane. You watch as city guards try dragging away the worst cases. A woman collapses mid-spin, her body twitching uncontrollably as 2 men lift her under the arms. Her bare feet dangle limply, toes curled like dying petals. Her eyes flicker open for a moment, meeting yours in silent pleading before rolling back into her skull. The music, however, never stops. Musicians are now paid to play in shifts, their brows furrowed with dread as they bow and strum for hours, knowing their tunes are soundtracking agony. One mainstream historical fact: these musicians sometimes wept openly as they played, realizing they were feeding a plague they could not end. Nearby, an old priest mumbles prayers with trembling fingers sliding along his rosary beads. His lips form St. Vitus's name over and over like a mantra. Some say Vitus himself danced to his death while praising God, and this plague was his curse upon sinful mortals. Others believed witches had bewitched the town with dance spells. Historians still argue whether such theories were sincere faith or desperate scapegoating in the face of horror they could not explain. Suddenly, the crowd parts slightly. A young boy, no older than 9, stumbles into view. His tiny feet slap the stone pathetically, his head lolling side to side, tears streaming down his face as he sobs between gasping breaths. His mother tries to pull him away, screaming prayers into his ear, but his limbs jerk violently, forcing him back into the infernal rhythm. You wonder how long his tiny heart can last. You wonder if he even understands why his body betrays him. In a fleeting moment of dark humor, you imagine a medieval fitness instructor barking orders. "Faster! Don't stop until you die!" It's morbid, but in this nightmare, sarcasm feels like the last refuge of sanity. As dusk falls again, the dancing square glows with flickering torchlight, casting monstrous shadows of flailing arms and stomping feet onto timbered walls. A light breeze carries the smell of bread baking from a distant bakery, mingling with the coppery scent of blood and the sour stench of urine. Your mind drifts to quieter times, but the drumming rhythm reels you back in. The priests arrive once more to gather the dancers who still twitch but cannot stand. They tie red shoes onto blistered feet and hoist wooden crosses into trembling hands, praying loudly to drown out the drums. But their voices are hoarse and hollow, the prayers thin as spider silk against the thundering beat of the plague. You watch them disappear into the night, a stumbling procession winding through dark alleys towards the shrine of St. Vitus. Lanterns sway, illuminating faces twisted with pain, hope, or vacant submission. Behind them, the city square remains alive with flailing figures, an unholy theater lit by torchlight under the indifferent stars. As the priests vanish into darkness, the music continues. The dancers keep moving, and Strasbourg holds its breath, waiting for dawn to reveal how many fell and how many remain trapped in this dance towards death. Night fades into dawn once more, and you stand at the edge of the square, the sky streaked with pale gold and bruised lilac. The music has stopped. Silence hangs heavy over Strasbourg. You feel your own breathing loud in your chest as you step forward into the dawn haze, past upturned barrels and discarded shoes stained with blood. Hundreds of bodies lie sprawled across the cobblestones, their limbs twisted in unnatural angles, faces slack with the final release of death. Some have collapsed in each other's arms, as if they clung to human warmth until their last breath. A few still twitch feebly, gasping like fish on a riverbank, their glazed eyes reflecting the sunrise they may not see for long. Historians still argue whether the plague burned itself out because of exhaustion, starvation, or a sudden lifting of mass hysteria. Some chronicles report that as many as 15 people a day died at its peak, while others insist the death toll was exaggerated by chroniclers hungry for drama. But whether dozens or hundreds, the tragedy remains the same. So many lives ended mid-dance, their final moments a chaotic rhythm of agony. You watch city officials step over corpses, their faces grave as they survey the silent ruin. Priests kneel by the dying, murmuring final prayers, pressing cool metal crosses to fevered foreheads. One mainstream historical fact is that after the plague ended, Strasbourg's council issued strict religious processions, masses, and penitential pilgrimages, hoping to appease whatever force had sent this curse. Fear of dancing itself lingered in the city for generations. Weddings grew quieter. Festivals lost their old riotous jigs. Music became something to fear. A quirky tidbit from local oral histories claims that even 50 years later, elders warned children not to dance too wildly, lest the plague spirit seize their feet. Imagine your grandma scolding you mid-TikTok routine, whispering, "That's how the dancers of Strasbourg died." You move slowly through the fallen crowd. A lute lies smashed on the stones, its strings snapped and curled like dead worms. The drummers sit slumped against a wall, silent, their hands blistered from days of relentless beats. You see a young girl, no more than 12, her face peaceful in death, dried tear tracks cutting lines through the dust on her cheeks. As the sun rises higher, Strasbourg's survivors emerge from their shuttered homes. They step carefully between corpses, covering their mouths and noses against the stench of blood, sweat, and final voidings. Somewhere, a rooster crows, breaking the suffocating silence. Life must continue, though it now carries the echo of relentless drumming in its bones. Historians still argue whether this event was purely physical, or if it revealed something darker within the medieval human psyche, a desperate need to move when trapped by fear and grief, to dance when words and prayers could no longer keep death away. You imagine the eerie stillness after weeks of pounding rhythms, how quiet the city feels, how the streets, scrubbed of blood, still hold ghosts of stomping feet. You picture yourself stepping into the square at dusk, hearing faint echoes of music in your head. Your own toes curl involuntarily, as if testing the cursed rhythm. You shake it off, but deep inside, you understand why they danced. Perhaps they felt that as long as they moved, death could not catch them, until it did. Now the city prays fervently, afraid to celebrate, afraid to sing. The shrine of St. Vitus is crowded daily with mourners and the terrified lighting candles in trembling hope that his wrath has ended. But the fear remains, humming softly beneath every silence. And as night falls again over Strasbourg, the final corpses are carried away for burial, priests chanting, bells tolling low and mournful. The music has stopped, the dancers have collapsed, but the memory remains, whispered from mother to child, from elder to youth. A warning etched into the city's marrow: dance too long, and your feet will carry you into death. Now, your eyelids grow heavy with the weight of history's strange tragedies. You breathe slowly, feeling the softness of your pillow beneath your cheek, the gentle rhythm of your chest rising and falling like a calm sea under moonlight. The dancers of Strasbourg fade from your mind, their flailing limbs stilled, their blistered feet now silent beneath layers of dark earth and forgotten prayers. Let your breath settle into an easy, quiet cadence. Feel your body sinking deeper into the mattress, each muscle loosening with sleepy relief. The world grows softer around you, the quiet hum of your fan, the muted shadows of your room, the cool brush of night air against your skin. The square is empty now. There are no drums, no pipes, no frantic stomping feet, just the hush of dawn settling over silent rooftops, the faint rustle of wind curling through old timber beams. You imagine yourself walking alone through those streets, the city bathed in pale gold, nothing but distant birdsong and the far-off toll of bells marking the waking hour. Allow yourself to drift further with each exhale. Your thoughts grow slower, your limbs heavier. In this quiet space, there is no cursed rhythm forcing your feet to move. There is only stillness, warm and gentle, wrapping around you like a soft woven blanket. Let your mind empty, each worry floating away on the breeze of your breathing. The story is over for tonight. The dancers are at rest, and so are you. Sleep comes easily now, wrapping you in its deep, silent peace. Your dreams wait patiently, ready to lead you into calmer worlds where your feet never have to move again, unless you choose to dance.